All right, so welcome everybody to Sales Success with Virgil Reyes. I do want to encourage you, if you're not subscribed already to my YouTube channel, make sure you look up my name, Virgil Reyes. I will be naming it something I'm not sure yet as far as like the YouTube channel, but for now it'll be on my profile under YouTube or under Virgil Reyes. I do have two profiles, so it will be the one that has over 65 subscribers or around that vicinity. I don't know how much it's going to have by the time you see this. I will leave all of the information for me as well as Nathan inside of the description. Also, if you're not already inside of our Facebook group, the Sales Success with Virgil Reyes, I will leave a link inside of the comment section. So please feel free to join us. We would love to have you either a guest here on the in the live Facebook Live, or as you know, somebody that can just comment or even help us out. So in the future, just so you know, we will be having also hot seat trainings, which is kind of like what Jace went through. I don't know if you were here for that call, anybody that was here, but we'll have like a hot seat where we'll put, you know, we'll have like a prospect and then a closer, and then we'll go through the whole role play and then see how it goes out and see what people, what the reactions are, what it is that we need to do to improve. Because of course it's not to grill ourselves or to beat ourselves up, but it's more to just find improvement and also get us outside of that comfort zone. We want to make sure that we do that. Also, I am going to encourage everyone that if you're in the Facebook group already, make sure that you look at the topic section where it says starter pack, because that'll give you everything that you need to kind of get started inside of remote sales. These are just things that have helped me out, like the evaluation sheet. You can self-evaluate, or you can have a role play partner that can help evaluate you, but you use the sheet so you know exactly where you're at, and then you can get to the next level. I also provided a video. That will help you to find opportunities using LinkedIn. It's called the 5 Key Elements to attract more qualified influencers. And you do that on autopilot, which means that you don't ever have to go out there and look for influencers. They'll actually come to you. And it's a great way to nurture relationships with influencers. I also have a program called Influencers Unlimited for those people that need more encouragement, not sure how to step forward, how to find influencers, how to work with them. I'm more than happy to help you out with that. And then my name is Virgil Reyes, of course. I am a remote salesperson. My background was in blue collar. So I worked in construction first, and then I started my own business with my mixer truck business. And the whole purpose of doing that was so that I could just outsource everything, make 5 figures a month, and then stay at home. And it took me over 5 years before I could even realized that it was never going to move forward. I only had 2 trucks, one was broken, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to get into remote sales. And, you know, before I did remote sales, I didn't know anything about social media. So everything that I'm learning right now is usually from people within the community of closing, and they're teaching me as we go, and I'm very grateful for it. It's a community where we share with one another everything that has to do with sales. And today I brought with me a guest. His name is Nathan. It's Nathal Segal. Is that correct?
Yeah, you get the gold star. Most people get it wrong.
Oh, awesome. So welcome to the program. I want to kind of introduce you, or have you, if you can, introduce yourself to everybody here. Tell us a little bit about you, what it is that you're currently doing right now. And again, I appreciate you for coming on this live stream right now to help me out with you know, just organizing all of the things, because I will be going, as you can see, I'm sharing my screen and there's a lot of things I'm going to be sharing here. But if you could just introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are, what you do, anything that you can for the next 10 minutes, please.
Oh, for the next 10 minutes. I won't be able to speak that long. But anyway,
Okay, great.
yeah, I'm coming to you from Mexico. I'm currently house sitting for a friend of mine. And, you know, I've had a background in sales for a large part of my life. Started when I was 9 years old and selling greeting cards door to door. Worked for my dad in his jewelry business until he retired in '83. And I moved out to Vancouver from Calgary. And it took a while to get going, but I wound up starting a business as a freelance special effects photographer. Did that for a little while. The business died in '88, '89, so I had to reinvent myself. And over a period of years, got into doing special effects photography. And I worked with a team of photographers doing stock photography for catalogs. And then that industry changed really quickly, and I had an offer to become a freelance writer after I got fired from a job as working as a software instructor. And that was really fortuitous because Virgil has been talking about the virtual lifestyle, the remote lifestyle, and in 80, was it 88 or 89, somewhere around there, when I started to learn about how to work as a freelance writer, within a very short period of time, I remember saying to my girlfriend at one point, I said, you know, I don't need to live in Victoria anymore. I can live anywhere so long as I have a laptop. And a year later, we broke up, and then I had to find out, well, is this actually true? Actually, it was in 2005 that we broke up. I came here to where I am right now in Mexico, and I got an apartment and uh, discovered that they had just gotten cable internet service 7 months before. So I called up, got the service, got it installed. And when everything was installed, it was like back in the days, like if you wanted to call somebody, you needed to have a phone and you needed to have a box and would have to plug into the internet. And I called a buddy of mine in Victoria from where I am, which is Bucerias. And he's going, hey, how are you doing? Oh, fine. What are you doing? I said, oh, I'm standing here in my new apartment in Bucerias. And he's going, wow, you sound like you're next door. And I said, no way, man. I'm about 3,000 miles away from you. And I'm looking out my window here at an iguana sunning itself on the roof next door. So that was the beginning of the remote stuff. And so I just continued freelance writing, but also around 2005, thereabouts, is when I started to get interested in internet marketing. And way back then, I bought a program. It was created by a guy by the name of Terry Dean. And it was a course called Protege, and I wound up working with a mentor. And it was as a result of everything that I learned with that guy that I learned about something extremely powerful for marketing, which is joint ventures. And I worked for about 3 weeks. I found a partner, signed a contract with them, and that year I managed to earn over $100,000 in sales from writing. And it was really cool because I had written a book called The Photoshop Companion. But with this outfit, which turned out to be the Corel Corporation, they produce Corel Draw and PhotoPaint and so on. And I said, you know, I know that what I have is a conflict, but I'm willing to rewrite all my tutorials to match your content. What do you say? They said yes. And so that created a relationship. And over a period of years, they sold over 11,000 copies of an ebook that I wrote. And I wound up with a small targeted list of about 600 people that I was able to sell additional products and services to. So for me personally, in terms of sales, the very best way to get things going to really make an impact and to earn a lot of money in a short time is joint ventures. And a variation of that is affiliate marketing. They're not the same. They might, a lot of people use those words or those phrases as if they mean the same thing. They don't. They're similar, but different. Anyway, currently I'm in Mexico, like I said, house sitting for a friend of mine, living in this little town called Bucerias. And I just finished building a sales letter for a colleague of mine. His name is Rick Schnabel. And it's level 1 of neuro-linguistic programming, where you teach yourself how to become a coach, if that's what you want to do, but you also teach yourself neuro-linguistic programming. So you use it to do things like eliminate limiting beliefs, get rid of traumas, deal with phobias, create confidence on demand. Like, for example, if you said to me, hey, Nathan, I'd like to learn how to have confidence on demand. I've got 2 methods to do it, and I could teach you how to do it in 15 minutes. And after that, if you need to access confidence, you would employ a technique in NLP, which is known as an anchor. And if you do that, it will literally create a physiological and mental change in you within seconds. And then you can go in and do whatever you need to do that requires confidence and knock it out of the park. So there you go.
That's great.
It.
Thanks. Appreciate that, Nathan. So if anybody has any questions about what Nation just shared with us, I did ask him to come onto another live to introduce what it is that he's gotten into, because I know all of us as remote sales representatives are looking for other job opportunities, or not, I wouldn't say a job opportunity, but we're all looking for something to do in our entrepreneurial journey. Everybody, of course, is hungry, trying to figure it out. And I want to make sure that we get everybody's experience. If you don't mind, Nathan, maybe we can sit down, get onto a calendar when it is that we could sit down for another hour. And then maybe you can kind of break down to everybody like how it is that it's helped you. And maybe if it's not worth like a whole hour of content, we can just do it for like 30 minutes or something like that, just to
Oh,
explain to other
I
people.
can use,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I can easily talk for an hour or longer. I mean, there's a
Okay.
tremendous amount of stuff that I have, and one of the things that I could do for your audience is to give a demonstration, like for example, the confidence on demand. There are two ways of doing it, and one way literally takes me only 2 minutes to show somebody how to do that, and the other way takes 10 minutes. But when you want to do this thing called activating the anchor, that literally takes only a few seconds when you need it. And it's amazingly powerful and really fast. And other things, like another thing which I really have enjoyed doing is something called the fast phobia cure, which was developed a number of years ago and they refined it. But you can literally cure somebody of a phobia in about 20 minutes. And I know
Wow.
that sounds kind of crazy, but NLP is really amazing. There are a lot of things that you can do within it that can happen very quickly. And like part of what I'm doing or is involved in this course that I'm promoting, you will learn about something called conversational hypnosis. So in other words, having a conversation with somebody literally and helping them change their lives without actually doing anything that seems special or obvious or any trance work. It happens in conversation. You present things in a certain way, and as a result, effect change. So apologies for that. Somebody just tried calling me and I had to hang up on them.
That's fine.
Yeah, so that's it.
That's great, man. I think I would love to hear more about what you want to what you would like to share. It sounds very
Sure.
interesting. I know that a lot of us in the trainings that we've been through for remote sales, we do use a lot of this technique that you were just referring to just now. And
Yeah.
it's something that I know would interest a lot of people because that's really taken me very far with not only like the prospects that I'm with on the phone, but also with business owners with opportunities. So I would love to hear what you have to share, and you and I can sit down afterwards and then kind of figure out like when would be a good day and time to talk. So again,
Sure.
we're here today to get into I guess you could say the differences between a B2C versus a B2B, and then going from cold to hot. And as you can see on my screen, I've actually outlined this. It's in the comment section. So if you want to bring this up and you want to use it as like a quick reference, I will do that. But I've also been able to develop a few scripts that I put together. And I think what would couple what I'm presenting to you right now is going to be like a follow-up. And I know that a lot of you have been asking me to present a follow-up training, and I would love to go through that for you. In fact, I'm going to put something in writing to kind of give you an idea of what it is that I do. But for now, what we're going to do is kind of go over these scripts. And if anybody has any comments, any feedback, anything that they want to add, any questions, feel free to ask. And that's why Nathan decided to help me on this call today, is to answer any of your questions live while we're going through it. And so if you look at this guide, I'm just going to start right here. Let me see if I can um, enlarge this image. That way everybody can see it clearly. I think that would be a better size right there. I think everybody will be able to see it here on Facebook Live.
I see it, but
So
it's really tiny, tiny for me at least. The problem I have on my end is I'm running on a 14-inch monitor, so the print is almost microscopic.
okay, no problems, because I'm actually going to go over this right now live on the call. So I'm going to read
Cool.
everything out. And I've come up with 3 scripts so far, but I noticed that as I got to the warmer leads, it's a lot easier. It's a lot less explanation, mainly because everybody already is familiar with warm inbound leads. So I'm looking at the Facebook Live right now, and it looks like it's going to come out really great. But again, I encourage anybody, if they have anything that they want to add, or if you find this useful, please share this with anybody. It's free for anybody that wants to to use it. If you know anybody that can partake in it, invite them to the group. We're going to have a lot more trainings like this. So I call this cold calling intro guide. And the reason for that is because whenever we're on calls, we already know about sales. So it's not really like the whole process from A to Z. It's more about just getting into the introduction. In other words, getting them on the phone call and keeping them on the phone call. You're essentially selling your first 5 minutes on the phone call. And there's a lot of different trainings out there that you can use, like Jordan Belfort's Straight Line Persuasion. I'm sure Dan Locke has something on this as well. And then you have Grant Cardone has very good techniques, as you saw with Jace Gray. That's some of the stuff that he shared with us. But all of these different techniques definitely will help you out with the way that you approach the call. In most cases, a lot of people that I associate with, Nathan, will not, they won't jump onto opportunities because they don't know how to handle a cold call or a lukewarm call. And so I put together these scripts together so that they can kind of quickly reference on how to approach it. And there is going to be more that we're going to add to it. But for now, this is what I have, because I think within an hour span, it's going to be enough or plenty for us to go over. So the first thing that I wanted to point out is, of course, yeah, whenever we're doing cold calls, it's all going to be outreach, right? It's never going to be scheduled on our calendar. It's never going to be somebody expecting us to call. It's very unexpectedly, right? One of the things that always comes up is that they don't have time. And yeah, it's because we're catching them at a very bad time. So number one, you want to make sure that you're calling at times, during hours that's appropriate, not during times, making sure that whatever time zone they're in, like if I'm in Pacific, or let's say, for example, if I'm in Eastern and I call at 9 a.m. in the morning, guess what? In the Pacific time, that's going to be 6 a.m. in the morning. So they're not going to be too happy when you call them at 6 a.m. in the morning. So make sure you keep that in mind. I know that's very basic, but I want to make sure that this is user-friendly for anybody out there. So now we have B2C cold calling is what I want to get started into. And the first thing that I want to point out is last week I was on the call with Don and we discussed about how whenever you're selling to everyone, you're really selling to no one. Because it's so general. The haystack is so high. To find that one sale, that needle, is very, very difficult. So I want to encourage everyone that they find a niche opportunity, something that's, let's say, for example, real estate, or working with lawyers or dentists, or solar, lead generation, any of these different topics. As far as like, I know that like some of these are business, but you want to make sure that it's very niche. Like, let's say, for example, in the B2C space, somebody just wants to quit their job. That's very generalistic, but not everybody wants to quit their job. So you want to make sure that the audience that you're reaching out to are people that want to quit their job, let's say, for example, or they want a side income, or they want to retire early. They're trying to figure out how to get some extra income so that way they can just close the door. As you already know, like in 2012, and I always share the story while I'm closing, is in 2008 to 2012, we had a recession and a lot of people lost a lot of money, like through their 401k plans. And it got people to jump into like this survival mode, including myself. That's how I kind of transitioned into what I'm doing today, is that it was almost like preparing for another recession. I wasn't sure if I was recession proof. So I wanted to make sure. But what I like to do is I like to say, back then, and this is using implication questions like we learn about in Neil Rackham's Spin Selling, which is a very good sales book, but it talks about like talking about implications. So I would say something along the lines of, back in 2012, I don't know if you remember or where you were at that time, but a lot of people lost their money. They lost their 401k plans. They lost money from their retirement because they had to go and borrow money and do these other things that took from what they already had. And so they're very concerned with how much money they're going to be able to retire with, and especially with the inflation. So what we're doing today is we're helping out people like yourself to either retire early, quit their jobs, or find another income, just to make sure that you prepare for something like this. Wouldn't it be nice to have a couple of $1,000s in the bank account? And of course they would say yes. But that's just like a kind of like an example of the implication questions that I like to use. Or the niche that you want to focus on. But I do also have like certain requirements whenever it comes to niches. So I have here like a Virgil's must-haves, and I put those in there for each subject. So for cold calling, it would be to partner with reputable business owners. That means the influencer who have passion. It's extremely important that they're very passionate about what they do, not just a desire to earn money, because that will definitely make it very difficult for you to sell, especially if they don't have any credibility, which is one of the criteria. I want to make sure that they have some kind of credibility, some kind of testimonial, some kind of proof of concept that what they're selling actually works. Um, Currents that have or influencers that have a current client or a current track record with their clients. In other words, they currently have clients. That's very important. Offers that over deliver. In some cases, sometimes when I look at their offer, I'm like, well, I don't know if this would be worth investing $5,000. And it might just be the way that they have it structured. They just have to restructure it so that it looks like, or you can see that it has a lot more value. Um, and then also, I always look forward to see if they preferably have any kind of finance options or a split pay, something along those lines, which makes it very easy or very difficult, I should say, for the prospect to say no. So you want to do everything. You want to see that the offer has everything that makes it impossible for the prospect to say no. And it just makes it a lot easier for you to close. Now it's just about inserting the right techniques to ensure that you are effective whenever you're on the phone call and not wasting too much time. And that's what I'm going to go over right here. So right now, what I want to do is I want to talk about starting with a hook. And that's exactly what Jace was actually going over. There's a lot of things that we're told that is not ideal to do. But like if you ask me, I think it's very, very worth the time to use these techniques. Um, but just so you, if you don't understand what a hook is, it's explaining how the offer can help the prospect solve their problem or achieve their goals, kind of like what I was doing with the implication question. So it would be something along the lines of, what we're doing is we're helping people like yourself to become recession proof, putting in a little bit of extra money in your pocket if you're looking for just some side money, or if you're looking to retire early or quit your job. So we kind of put out like the bullets of what it is, that the benefit that they're going to get out of it. And that will determine whether or not they want to stay on the call. Now, depending on which kind of niche you're in, there's other techniques that you can use, and we can talk about that another time. Or if you have a suggestion, I'd be more than happy to go over that right now. But I'm going to keep moving on. So another thing that I like to do is build trust by sharing about myself or about the influencer using storytelling. So storytelling has always been a very, very powerful tool. I've noticed that it's cut a lot of time from my sales calls because in order to build trust, it takes some kind of rapport. And in some cases, whenever you're asking questions, people are not going to be open to answering them until you humanize yourself on the conversation, mainly because they don't see you on the call, right? All they do is they go over what they can hear over your voice. So yeah, absolutely. Tonality is very important, but also sharing about yourself, letting them know who you are, what you're about, as well as the influencer or the business owner. And that helps them to gain your trust. And you'll notice that they'll open up a lot more. They'll ask questions, especially in a B2C setting, not as much in a B2B, just to point that out. So I do have an example here where it says, like let's say for example, Nathan is the prospect, and I would say, hi Nathan, we have 100 or we've helped out hundreds of people generate passive income, which means you don't have to quit your job or until you generate enough to do so. And then what I would do is I would usually finish it with a question. So let's see here, I have here, find out your prospects if your prospect has time. So once I throw my hook, then I would say, is this a bad time? Or you can say, you got a minute. That's one of the coaches I know says that, you got a minute. And it does work. It's all about the tonality. I've used it. It works very well. But also, is this a bad time? And typically people have a no reaction. So if you say, is this a good time? People will say no. So what you do is you say, is this a bad time? And they would give no, it's not a bad time. I got some time. What's going on? And then you can continue from there. Okay. So, what I like to do is use like the product name or the influencer's name. So Nathan, or actually Nathan would be the prospect. Let's use Virgil as the influencer. Okay, so Virgil used to work hard at his corporate job, and uh, when a promotion came up, rather than giving it to him as hard as he's been working, they actually give it to the CEO's daughter, and that's probably not something you've gone through, right? And in most cases, Nathan's reaction would be, well, I actually did go through something similar like that, or I heard about somebody that did that. And believe it or not, by sharing that story, you're actually building rapport, you're building trust because they're starting to open up to you. Also by you sharing the story of the influencer. So it gets them, what you're doing is you're explaining where your influencer came from, as well as you're also explaining like, you're trying to get them to comment to that, to engage in that conversation. And when they start engaging, that's when you know that you're starting to build rapport, and it's very important. It's going to be very helpful. So what do you think so far, Nathan? I meant, does that sound pretty good to you?
Yeah, pretty good. I do want to say I have a different approach, though. I would choose a different way of doing things. That's all.
Absolutely. So do you have something in mind that you
Yeah,
want to
it's
share with
something that
us?
came up. It's something that's come up repeatedly, actually. I'm a part of a marketing group. We meet once a week. We've been doing it for several years. And one of the things that came up, and I'm going to use it especially now with what I'm doing, is it's something that I learned from the book How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie. And there's a story in the book where it talks about a guy who was trying to get a customer's business for 2 years. He kept visiting once a week and he couldn't get anywhere. And one day he tried something different. And I don't remember it exactly as it was written. I need to look it up again. But he walked into the prospect's office and he looked around. The secretary said, "You've got 15 minutes." And he looked around and he saw something to do with sailing, all these things to do with sailing. And he asked the prospect a question like that, or to do with sailing. And the guy just responded really well. And within a very short time, they were in a deep conversation, which went on for a couple of hours. And at the end of it, which had nothing to do with selling and nothing with the guy trying to pitch, the prospect said to him, uh, blah, 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 here's an order. And it was more money than the salesperson had made in like 5 years or something like that. It was a huge order at that time. And so a practical example of this is a while ago, I went to a gathering, social gathering with my girlfriend, and I met this guy. And I thought, kind of an interesting dude. I want to see if I can find his sweet spot. So I used a whole bunch of different things to do that. I used the technique of active listening, which I learned from being a podcaster. I used questioning, which I learned from NLP. And I just started asking questions and listening very carefully. And after a while, I found a sweet spot. I asked him one question and he just lit up like a Christmas tree. And after that, he became super enthusiastic, super open. And as it turns out, something what he liked, which is renovations, home renovations, is something I really enjoy as well. So we became really good friends as a result of that. So in terms of the hook, in terms of working with a customer now, my approach is I'm going to do something very different, which is a technique that John Assaraf called about slow down to speed up. And what that means is with every single prospect or potential prospect that I reach out to, instead of trying to sell them on anything to do with my offer or talking about myself really in any way, I'm going to be looking at their site and studying and see if I can find out what it is that they really like the most and lead with that and see if I can create a conversation around that. And if I can, that would be a really good way of building the rapport and the relationship. But it has to be sincere. You can't fake it. And that's part of the trickiness of this. But you need to learn how to ask questions. You need to learn how to do your research and to approach a person in a different way. And if you do, you can create some really great relationships. So that's the approach that I would use. And it may just naturally lead into, like, at some point they'll say to you, "So what do you do?" And you tell them. At that point, you're like, the cool part about this is that you don't have to pitch. You don't have to do anything. It's all about them. And that's
Absolutely.
what copywriting is all about. When you write a sales letter, yeah, you tell your story, but it's all about them. What can we do for you? How can we help you? What are the benefits of what we have? But you've got to get to know them first. And if you can create that
100%.
conversation, it's going to make a huge difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Building rapport is something that's extremely important. And I think you would
Yeah.
agree with me that in person, it's a lot easier because you have somebody's body language,
Oh,
even on
yeah.
a video conference, than it would be on a cold call. And that's part of the reason why the techniques that like I'm sharing here is a little bit different, because in person, it's definitely a lot easier. Like I've had a lot of sales experience in person, and I definitely would never use these kinds of techniques. I don't even throw out hooks. You know what I mean? Typically, I just introduce
Yeah.
myself, get to know them, start asking questions. You find an interest in what they're talking about and what they're interested in talking about. And once you're able to build up that trust and that rapport, it's very easy to close a deal. But whenever you have somebody over the phone, you don't have the body language. You don't have
No.
the the same rapport that you would. And in most cases, it's almost like if we were to just approach somebody on the street and say, hey, guess what, I got this right here that'll help you out, right? It's almost that exact same approach when it comes to
Yeah.
remote sales with cold calls, right? We have to be able to nurture or kind of warm them up in that within that first few minutes. And yes, we will get people that hang up on us. That's totally normal. Just it might be because somebody's having a bad day. Just the only advice that I would have for you is don't take it personal. Develop a thick
Yeah.
skin, especially if you're going to do cold calling. The best kind of cold calling, in my opinion, is if you are the influencer. If you're the influencer and you're cold calling other people, it's a lot easier to close people because you're more passionate about it. You're getting paid full pop on the commission. It's not just a 10% off of what somebody else is paying you. But if the commission is high enough, I'm definitely open to cold calling. Absolutely, I've done it before. I've been very
Yeah.
successful, and there's been times when I've failed a lot, and it is a very painful process. But yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Well, there's another way that you can do this whole thing, which is what I've done for years as a freelance writer. Um, I rarely picked up the phone. Most of the time, I would send out what they call query letters, email. For for me, like I have issues with the cold calling too, like so many people. I don't like it. And but if I send out an email, I break the ice. I break the ice internally for me. It's just a little device that makes it easier for me to go to the next step. But then again, there have been times where I look at something and I go, I've got an idea, and I pick up the phone, I call them. And I've wound up with many assignments that way, sometimes not as a writer, not just one, but a series, like I pitch them on a series. And they go, cool, let's do it. And that would be sometimes from a phone call as opposed to writing a query letter. I've done both. So it just really depends. It has to do with, like, when you're looking at the the prospects, it's like right now, if I'm to do something like this, I'm going to be researching that person. I want to see what I can learn about this person. Do they look like they might be a good fit? Like, for example, with NLP, something that I'm looking for is like a keyword, leadership. And if I find somebody who's in the leadership space, I might just write to them and say, when looking at your profile, it says that you're involved in leadership. Can you tell me more about what that means?
right.
And
Yeah.
when you're creating an open door, you're creating you're asking a skillful question. Say, so it's really important with that kind of thing. When you lead in such a way, then you create a greater likelihood for somebody to respond. And if they don't respond right away, you call them a couple of days later. And that one question, at least for me, that's how it works, is to break the ice. But there are times when I just write to people and I get a fabulous response. I mean, probably the best response I ever got as a freelance writer was a few years ago. I was using a refined technique of marketing, a streamlined way of marketing. I sent out 138 query letters. Well, one of them, I couldn't do that. I had to use her contact form. So I used a contact form and I pitched the editor. And he wrote back to me, and I pitched him on 4 ideas, and he wrote back and said, yeah, these are kind of cool. And then he said, what do you think about these ideas? And I said, yeah, sure, I can do that. And he wrote back and he said, great, I'll take all 8. And I nearly fell off my chair. That was $2,000 for the business.
That's
And
incredible.
over the course of 10 weeks, I wrote 27 articles for these people. And then I had another thing happen where I was receiving a newsletter long term to do with Windows. And I looked at it one day and I thought, geez, I wonder. And I sent a really quick pitch. I wrote back and said, you know, my name is such and such. I've been receiving your newsletter for a while. I'm curious. Do you hire freelance writers? I mean, that was my pitch. I kid you not. Do you hire freelance writers? And they wrote back and they said, yes. And I've been working with that same editor now for like 6-7 years.
That's impressive. Is
So
that remotely?
you just never know. Yeah, it's remotely.
Awesome. That is great.
I mean, the magazine went through a change, and I lost the position because of a new editor. And then a while ago, when I was doing some searches, I discovered that my links for the magazine didn't work. And I did some searching, then I found a new site, and I looked at it and it was just like, And then I started looking a little bit deeper into the masthead. The masthead is where you find everybody who works for the magazine. And I discovered my old editor was there. So I wrote to him. And I said, hey. And I got work again. I'm working for them again. You just never know.
That is awesome. Thanks for sharing that with us, Nathan. So yeah, one of the things that we will be going over in a different training is going to be definitely email outreach. That's actually going to be probably the next segment that I'm going to have next week, unless I have a guest on that like yourself. That's probably going to be the next thing that we tackle. But yeah, whenever we're doing cold outreach, there's a lot of things that I've noticed that are very effective. Like one of the things that I noticed is that the colder the call is, like in other words, if they know nothing about it, the more of a chance that us as a salesperson on a phone call is going to make 80% of the call. You know, like in most cases, we've been taught that whenever the calls are a lot hotter, we only have to speak 20% of the time, which I agree 100%, especially if they're already closed logically. But in this case, if we have to close them emotionally, then we're going to have to get into a lot more discussion of the details of what it is that we're selling, and without getting into like the features of it, right? More of like the benefits and the advantages, kind of like what it speaks about in Neil Rackham's spin selling. But the one thing that I've noticed is that if the prospect is busy, and that's what I wanted to share with everybody here, is that it is important, number one, that the hooks that you're throwing out there are very good, that it captures their attention, that you're selling them on just that 5-minute conversation or the whatever it is, 3 minutes. But if they decide that they're not, you know, they don't have time inside of the call, most of the people that have been trained for these kinds of calls typically are trained on a 1-call close. And I'm trying to get kind of like into the realm of, if you're doing these cold calls, it's good, especially if it pays great, because there's been commissions that have been paid out there, Nathan, believe it or not, that have been upwards of like $10,000, $20,000 for cold calls. But it just really depends on what the product or service is. But that's one thing that I want to kind of instill in everybody is that, you know, whenever you have high paying commissions and it is a cold calling process, it's okay to nurture those leads. It's okay to have a pipeline to follow up with them every so often. And we're going to talk about that in the next training about follow-up. But if they don't have time, it's okay. Say, great, when, you know, I have my schedule open right here. When would you like to schedule another call, and get them to commit to a certain day and time? Because again, like I said at the beginning of this call, or at the beginning of this feed, that most of the time we're interrupting their day. You know what I mean? They're not expecting a call, and they definitely didn't set aside some time so that we can talk to them. But if they find an interest, they'll definitely jump on another call. So one of the most important things, like I mentioned before, is closing them logically. You know, one of the things that I like to do whenever I'm closing them logically is, while I'm explaining to them, like kind of doing the benefits and the advantages, is I like to hit pain points while I'm doing it, like going through struggles that typical people would go through. I don't really ask for the prospect's experience, like what their what they're currently going through. I try not to, especially on a cold call. So what I do is I kind of hit them as I'm explaining things, and it makes it a lot easier to hit those pain points. And then eventually, once I kind of get through the explanation, then I go, is that anything kind of like what you're going through right now? And in most cases, it does warm them up. They'll be like, yeah, actually, I have gone through that. And it does definitely help out to move the conversation forward. So one of the examples that I have here is I have here like, and I didn't really like pick an offer. I just kind of made like a generalistic type of conversation because whenever we're doing cold calls, I don't see like a need to talk about the brand, talk about the company more so than it is to talk about the business owner and how it is that the offer helps out the person on the phone call. So during our 90-day course, we challenge over 100 clients monthly to consider the situation while delivering you an online education that will generate you $1,000 to $2,000 extra per month, as our other clients have by the end of the 90 days passively. And it doesn't require investing more than 1 hour of your day. What could you do with that kind of money? And like whenever we're educating them, whenever we're giving them logic, we want to follow up with a question just to get them to engage. One of the experiences that I had was with presentation calls, and I noticed that giving them all the logical side of things, trying to educate them, definitely you'll lose your prospect on a phone call. So I want to make sure that you're clear that whenever you're talking to them and educating them, that yes, you absolutely throw out a question right at the end that's relevant. Don't ask them something that's irrelevant. You want to ask them a very, very relevant question. But that's the introduction for the B2C calling. It's you can get personal with them. I don't recommend that you do any research on them, mainly because if you come off talking to them about personal things, like if you've been looking at their Facebook profile, you're looking at their LinkedIn profile, just like Don said in the last class, it'll come off very creepy, like, why are you stalking me, kind of thing.
Mm.
So it's very important to build that relationship while you're with them on the call. The other thing is that when you're doing cold calling, you kind of want to get through those calls very quickly. So there's not really a need to do any research on the prospects, unless you maybe it's a B2C, B2B call. On a B2B call, it's going to be a lot more higher tickets, and those high ticket items that I was talking about, the $10,000, $20,000 commissions, are actually in B2B. It's not B2C. Very rarely will you get that high of a ticket in a B2C call, remotely sales and remote sales, by that matter. So B2B calling in the cold calling, it's very similar to the B2C. I just like to approach it very differently. In the B2C call, like I spoke about last week with Don, it's more about their pain points. You can get into personal things that they're going through as long as they volunteer it. It's not really something that I ask about. And that's one of the trainings that I'll be going through, is asking indirect questions so that you get the information that you need to without being intrusive, without being like an interrogator. And it definitely helps to build rapport, build trust, and let them open up about themselves. And we'll get into that in another training. But B2B calling is going to be very different because your pain points are not going to be personal. Like, how does that make you feel? Why is that important is a good question to ask, but it's just something that's kind of mundane. There's other questions that you could ask that are a lot better in my experience. If you have any opinion about that, feel free to comment or ask a question about that, and we can go over that. But the B2B cold calling, it is going to be, I still recommend that you make sure that it's very niche, because again, like if, let's say for example, it's a digital marketing agency and they will market for any kind of business out there. Imagine yourself trying to sell 50 different varieties of products or more to a business that you don't know what their needs are. Like, for example, let's take a restaurant, for example. A restaurant would benefit from the type of digital marketing that would help them to target their competitors. Like, let's say, for example, you have several different restaurants in an area, and whenever the competitor, or whenever a customer is going into a competitor's restaurant and they have to sit down and wait, they have this option where it notifies them, hey, by the way, there's this other restaurant and they have seating right now, to get them to get out of that waiting list and to move them into your restaurant. And so that's something that's very viable for restaurants. But when you use that for a dentist, it doesn't work the same. You know what I mean? Because you still have to make an appointment. There's all kinds of different variables involved. So you want to make sure that if you're going to do something like digital marketing, that it's very niche, that it's going to be strictly for real estate, strictly for dentist office, strictly for, even if it's digital marketing, if it's strictly for restaurants, that's a lot better than being just overall general. And it's going to be very difficult to close on those packages. And the reason why I bring this up is because I don't want you to waste your time on an opportunity if it's not going to pay you any money. So it must be very niche, as I said before, with the target audience, somebody that they target. For example, one of the first opportunities that I had was selling it was actually a program for youth pastors to keep their audiences engaged, you know, because teenagers don't stay inside of, church unless they have something that keeps them engaged, other than maybe like the opposite sex or whatever, typical thing that you would see. But there's things that you can do to keep people engaged. Like that's one thing that I'm learning on these live calls is how do I keep you guys engaged, asking questions, seeing if you guys have any reactions. But let me know what you think so far of the content, and I'm going to keep moving on. So the Virgil's must-haves in this situation would be a reputable business, again, owner with passion, somebody that's not just looking to make some money, because you can start closing for somebody that's very unethical. And in some cases, you may not even get paid if you're working for that person. A current client somebody that has current clients with a track record, offers that over deliver, preferably a split pay and a finance. So typically the same thing. And the reason why you want to focus on these things is because it makes it a lot easier to close on these opportunities. And this is just for over the phone. I don't recommend it in person. But the one-liners are very good because it gets people to laugh, especially business owners. Like most of them, as you already know, are going to be either drivers or rubies or people that are very serious about what they're doing. So they're going to be very rough to talk to, especially business owners. So these one-liners definitely help. As you already heard, Jace Gray a couple weeks ago, he demonstrated that very, very finessefully on the live. That was spontaneous. It's not like we planned any of these things. I just brought people on the call and I said, hey, let's grill this guy, see what happens. And he handled it extremely, extremely well. So I'm not interested. These are actually the one-liners that I'm talking about. I'm not going to go over them only because in that video we already went over them, but these are really, really great. One of the ones that I've been using lately, I kind of came up with myself, and I used it actually in the past, and that's why I started. I kind of reuse it again. But one of the analogies that I like to use whenever people say, "Well, I don't have that much money," I would say, "Have you ever been to a casino?" And they'd say like, well, no, or yeah. Okay, well, do you know which machine is the one that pays out in the casino? And they would say, I don't know which machine. And you say the ATM. Am I right? I mean, if you walk into the casino, you would agree with me that the only machine in there is going to be the ATM machine. Any other machine pretty much takes your money because it is a business. They're trying to take your money, right? Well, think of this business as your ATM machine. You invest with us and we're going to be able to give it back to you. And so that's kind of a way to hook them so that they get out of that mentality, that scarcity mindset that, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. If it's something worth investing in, then yeah, I'm going to. So you might want to take a look at this document later on. But moving into the hooks, it is also important to keep throwing out hooks, especially in a B2B situation, because they are going to try to get you off of the phone call. And I provided all of this for you. But again, you can go back, refer back to that video that Jace Gray and when I interviewed him, it's called Cold Calling Assassin Training. And so if you look at that, it'll give you a very good idea of how to use this stuff. But start working, again, like I said, with hooks. Explain how your offer can help the prospect solve their problem or achieve a goal. And then you have also the building the trust process by sharing about yourself, using that storytelling, which we will get into a training again. What I'm doing right now is just kind of fleshing out all of my ideas, getting them out of my brain and onto paper. And eventually we'll get back into all of these, but I am writing bullets as we're going through these to make sure that you are aware of all of these techniques and how you can use them. And if, let's say, for example, you have an opportunity, you see one of these techniques, you say, you know what, I think I can use this. Feel free to reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to personally coach you on how to use that. Um, so I have here another example where I explain the common goal, achieving without having to throw out too much details. And then again, I finish it off with a question. So, hi, Nathan. We've helped out hundreds of business owners like yourself scale their business within 90 days. And then what I like to do is find out if my prospect has the time, you know what I mean? Like we talked about in the first section. Is this a bad time? No, it's not. What do you got? Or yeah, I only got 5 minutes. What do you got? Or you got a minute? That's another one too you can use. Um, and then I would say, just like Virgil used to work hard year after year, realizing not making any progress until he found a way to make a breakthrough, which has helped not only himself to scale his business, but he's decided that he was going to help hundreds of other business owners, which we have in the past. And recently we're working with 100 clients rise from their plateau. But I'm not even sure if that's a problem that you're facing right now. Would you mind sharing with me about your business? And what that does is it just gets them to engage. You share about yourself and then get them to exchange, and it definitely helps out. But same thing as the B2C, you're going to do a lot of the talking in this situation. Probably 80 to 90% of the talking. That's okay. That's part of it. If they want to get off of the phone, that's okay. Reschedule it. I got my calendar here. When's a great time to get you on the phone again? Follow up, build your pipeline, especially if it's very high commissions. It's very important. Now, I do recommend that if you don't have any kind of experience with, or if your opportunity doesn't really, it's not really high ticket, I don't recommend that you stay on an opportunity like that cold calling. It's good for experience. It's good for understanding how it works. That definitely I would encourage if you want to jump on an opportunity that is cold calling, just for the experience, so you understand what it's like. Also, you understand the types of prospects and the types of objections that you're gonna have to handle. It definitely helps to prepare you for the better opportunities that are out there, rather than if you have no experience and you try cold calling on an opportunity that's very high ticket, you kind of burn yourself. You know what I mean? Because if everybody else is making a higher conversion, they're like, hey, what's going on, Virgil? You got to be able to prepare for that. So I would recommend, yes, cold calling is a way to get prepared, but higher ticket, you definitely want to nurture that kind of relationship with that influencer. So I do have here that it is very important to learn copywriting, which Nathan did bring up. It's very, very handy for your follow-up, and I'll get into that in our next training. But you definitely want to learn copywriting, because it is a way to get people to engage. And those emails that Nathan had mentioned earlier, whenever you're sending out emails, if you don't have something that captures their attention just in the subject line, they're not even going to open it up. I got to learn a lot about click rates with copywriting and how to, word my subject lines. And most of it came from other people's copy. I have an email where people send in their emails, and I'm able to see what copy that they use. And I kind of just cherry pick what I want to use in mine, and I customize it to what it is that I'm going to follow up on. But again, we'll get into that next time. You still have to close them logically, explaining what your offer is, giving as much details as possible, hitting pain points as you go along, using implication questions or using needs payoffs, their achievements, their goals, things like that, focusing on those things. And then what I like to do is, I have an example here. Within 90 days, we'll teach you how to teach you the easy step-by-step method hundreds of other business owners have utilized to help them reduce and increase profits, reduce risks and increase profits, which means that it will take you from where you're at today and as much as double your profits within these next 90 days. What do you think you would do if you saw a doubling of profits inside of your business? And allowing them to kind of explain and engage definitely helps out. So I have to put here, ask a question, because it's not actually in there, but I'm going to put a side note there so I remember I remember to include that in here later on. I will just leave that bold. There we go. And so for beginners, if you're not sure, whenever you're throwing out a question or an objection, I do encourage that you use I don't know. For Rubies, especially for people that are drivers, for people that are very serious, you want to use the I don't know and use the approach of I'm just an appointment setter. I can get you on a call with somebody that knows. And that way it kind of gives you an outlet to get out of that situation. So let's say, for example, if Nathan says, Virgil, how the hell am I going to make money within 90 days when I've been doing this for 50 years now? Well, not 50 years, let's say 15 years. And I haven't been able to scale so far. And say, you know what, that's a great question. I really don't know the answer to that. What I would like to do is open up my calendar here and set you up with somebody that knows the answer to that question. When's a good time to call you? And then the moment that that happens, what you're doing is that, or what I would do is I would hand it over to a colleague of mine. And during that time, I would also formulate what's the best way to deal with the situation. So you want to do some research at that time. And even before you call these people, you want to do some research, especially if it's high ticket, get to know their business a little bit. I typically will have like their Facebook page or their LinkedIn or their website on my screen while I'm talking to them, so I can kind of go over some of the details and see if they mention anything, see where their interests are at. And it does help to build that rapport and that credibility. Now, I know we're running out of time here, so we might have to just summarize this, but with a lukewarm to a warm lead, it's a little bit differently because you don't have to do as much nurturing, but it's still going to be a similar process. So one of the things that I do want to point out is that they are always going to be outbound calls. And this script that I'm going to provide for you is going to prevent you from wasting a lot of time. And it's helped me out a lot with opportunities that I've been closing on. So one of the things that I like to do is find people that, of course, are targeting their audience. Know the extremely, extremely important to know the product knowledge before the call. It'll help you to overcome any kind of objections and answer any questions. And then we have the Virgil's must-haves to partner with would be a reputation of the business owner, same as the other one, current clients with a track record, offers that over-deliver, preferably finance options, as well as um, anything else that just makes it easy for that prospect to say yes on the phone call. And then I came up with what I call the sifting script. And what it is it's sifting. It's going to be a qualify, disqualify immediately at the beginning of the call. I know that some of the trainings that we've had before have told us that, you sell them the first 5 minutes of the call. And then as soon as you're in there, then you can qualify, disqualify. And I think that it's more important to switch it around and just qualify, disqualify at the very beginning. So that way you're not wasting your time on the call. For example, I say, hello, is this Nathan? You say, yeah, speaking. Who's this? Hi, my name is Virgil. My understanding is that you were inquiring about earning money passively through a YouTube channel. Is that correct? And so that's the hook that I throw out there. And the reason why I use that verbiage is it's more like I was told to call you, a kind of approach, and at the same time you're throwing out your hook like, this is what we do to help out other people. Is this what you're interested in? And if he tells me no, I don't know anything about that, then you disqualify them immediately. And in most cases, like some of these influencers that I worked with kind of give you leads that are somewhat of a data dump. And if you don't know what that is, it's good leads mixed in with bad leads. And then they essentially what they're doing is they're selling you that's a lead generation service. So say, hey, I can provide you 100 qualified leads. All you got to do is just give me $200 a month. The influencer pays that $200 and then hands you those leads. And so you have 100 leads that you're going through, and you'll notice that a lot of them are wrong numbers. The emails are wrong, as well as the person's not interested. But if the approach is correct, if the approach is good, then right away they're going to tell you, no, I never inquired about that. Or they'll say, no, but I would like to hear more about that. Or they might just say, yeah, that's right, I did inquire. And then you can get into, okay, so how did you find out about us? And then figure out what it is that they how they were able to get warmed up. And you kind of figure out the system, which makes it a lot easier to understand, especially for future opportunities. So then if they say yes, like I said here, if they say like, who's this? Then you say, my name is Virgil. And then what I would do is share about the influencer or the product name. And then I throw my hook right away. We like to help people earn money passively using Facebook or YouTube. Is that something that you're interested, or do you have a YouTube channel? I like to follow up with a question, make sure that they understand, and then say, does that ring a bell? Just to get them to engage with you. Like, is that something you're familiar with? Do you recall any of this information at all? And if they don't, of course, you just disqualify them. If they do, they're like, yeah, or yeah, you know what, I'm interested. Listen, I'm actually working on my Facebook, YouTube channel. Then you can say, okay, great. Would you mind sharing with me? And I can see if we can actually help you out. Like we have other clients. I always come back to the credibility so that they don't mind sharing rather than you having to justify and talk to them and explain to them what it is that you're going to help them out with. Now, if they say yes, then you say, great. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you had in mind as far as like developing your YouTube channel and how to monetize it? And then let them explain. I want to, and then I say, I want to get a really good understanding of how we can help you. That definitely will tie it in like, hey, I want to collaborate with you. I want to work in sync with you. If they say no, then I just tell them, you know what, maybe this was a mistake. Do you know anybody else like that could have possibly provided your information? And in most cases, the excuse that I've been given is no, but I've been getting calls from all these people. And now you know that it's going kind of like through a lead generation service where they're just kind of gathering that data and then doing a data dump, just giving it to other people. But it's definitely worth exploring. And same thing with right here, I have B2C, but it should be B2B. It's going to be mostly Ruby again, or drivers, people that are very serious, uh, speaking about their business. And that's all they want to talk about. Um, you're going to have gatekeepers. That's something to keep in mind as well. If you're getting a lot of gatekeepers, if it is very high ticket, I think it's worth your time. If you're not, if it's not very high ticket, I do recommend probably moving on, or at least suggesting to your influencer, hey, you know what? Try to get me the direct information because I don't want to be calling all these gatekeepers trying to get in there. But if it's higher ticket, there are strategies to work through that, and we'll get into a training about that as well. Um, but the must-haves are exactly the same, and I still use the hooks. I still use the hooks that Jace Gray had introduced to us. The one-liners, they work really great, only for B2B, not B2C. But I think that all of these hooks, you'll agree, once you start using them, they're a lot of fun, and you're going to get the influencers, or I'm sorry, the business owners to engage on that call. You'll get them to chuckle a little bit and say, "Wow, that was good. I've never heard that before." Or they'll say something along those lines, or they'll know what training you've got it from, of course, because if they're business owners, they're also going through trainings as well. I do start off with hooks, as you know, and I continue to throw hooks throughout the call all the time, trying to get them enticed to see if they need to save time, see if they want more time with their family, see if they are overwhelmed with work. Throw all these different implications as well as goal achievers, these needs payoff type statements out there as you're closing them logically. You are going to close them logically, of course, in a lukewarm, but the most powerful and the most concise way to do it is using storytelling. Like I said, we'll get into a training about that, but like there's been calls that I've been able to close within 20 minutes and on a one call close from a lukewarm lead. It's just a matter of throwing out your hooks correctly, making sure that you capture their attention, getting them to stay on the phone call with you. And then once you do that, I share a story about like one of the success stories of, let's say, for example, a student inside of the program. Nathan was actually inside of the program, and within 3 months, he found his first client and was able to make money using this same program. And we want to make sure that you do the same thing as well. And it doesn't matter if you're barely starting or you're established or you're a big company. We can still help you. We have something for you. And so those are some of the things that I use in there. But I mean, I have an example in there, and you're more than welcome to go over it. Um, and yes, of course, the call is going to be a lot colder. So you are going to be talking a lot more than they would. You will be more than likely building up a pipeline. So using a lot of follow-up, that's also very important. But it's still all the same. The most important thing is really going to be at the very start of the call, making sure that you are qualifying or using the sifting script, which is just throwing out a hook and then seeing if they're interested. If they're not, then you disqualify them. That's great. And we're out of time, but I do have like an outbound list that I'm working on. But most of you already know how to work with inbound leads that are hot. And I think what I'll do is I'll develop also an outbound script as well. I don't think I'm going to go over this. I think the majority of the education is going to be in the cold script, as where is the warm to lukewarm. But let's see here. Did you have any questions or anything that you wanted to add to this, Nathan, before we jump off?
Nope, nothing.
Nothing at all. What did you think?
Well, it was kind of fun. It sparked some ideas in me about things that I'd like to talk about. I mean, one of the things that's been going on for me is I've also been thinking of creating a podcast. And
Very
it's
cool.
something that's been going on for a while. And now that this product is launched, very seriously thinking about doing it. And I was just received another note about another podcast run by a friend of mine. His podcast is called The Tim Gillette Show. And I was just wondering, I wonder if I should just go under my name or whether I should just use the name of the podcast that I have in mind. But the name that I have in mind is Mind Hacks. And it's all about, it's all about strategies for changing your mental state very quickly. So it's dealing with traumas, phobias, confidence, problems to do with where you think, I'd like to do this, but something this, and then doing something like parts integration, as they call it, all sorts of different things to help people overcome problems. Like another simple one, at least for me, it's simple, is how to go into networking events, how to overcome social anxiety without medicine. And I've encountered a lot of people who are on drugs and everything else because they're terrified of social situations. But I can show people how to deal with that without medication. Well, I wouldn't say stop it, at least not right away. But I know what to do to help them. Now, right now, of course, that's not a major issue because of what's going on in the world, but that's not going to be forever.
Right.
So,
Got it. Yeah.
anyway,
And I would love
yeah.
to hear more about that. So just to wrap it up, I do want to encourage everyone in here, if you can, share this video, like it. If you know anybody that benefits from it, please share it with them, as well as jump onto YouTube, subscribe. Just look me up, Virgil Reyes. It should be around 60 subscribers. I do have two channels. So the one that has a more subscribers, of course, that's the one that you want to subscribe to. So you can take a look at these videos. I know that there's a lot of people, because a lot of the people that we network with are around the world. So if you're in a different country, you can't make it to these lives, you could always check it on my YouTube page. Just subscribe to it. And please hit the heart button here inside of Facebook, like, comment, and subscribe inside of YouTube. And then share it with any of your friends that you know of here inside of Facebook. And if anybody can benefit again from this group, please invite your friends. I would be more than happy to go over anything. And if you have any questions personally, you can reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to get with you on a phone call or on a Zoom call and go over some of these techniques that we walk through. And I appreciate each and every one of you joining me on these calls. And thank you, Nathan, once again for helping us out on this call. You've been really, really great host, or I'm sorry, you've been a really, really great guest. And I look forward to another interview with you.
Cool. Works by me.
All right, guys, take care, and we'll see you next week. Make sure to remind, or if you know anybody that wants to find out about follow-up, make sure to join me next week. We will be here same time, same day, every week. We'll be having this. Talk to you soon.